Tools for topical and engaging live shows. How do you make them? What do you do to prepare for a topical show? A lot of work goes into a show. The better your show, the more work generally you have to put into it. I'm going to bring on an expert in doing that, a preparer, some might even say an over-preparer, somebody who really knows how to make great shows. I've been watching his show for some time now, and he's a good friend and a very good colleague, and he's been doing some great stuff in both the video worlds and the podcasting worlds, and of course he started out in the photography world. So stick around, should be a fun show. We're going to be interviewing Brian Matiash, and it should be exciting. So stick around, and we'll see you after the opening credits. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Wirecast Live. I'm your host, Andrew Haley, and each week we do live tips, shows, engagement. We talk about live video, live streaming, and just about everything under the sun. And you are in the right place if you're at all interested in video tech, video streaming, and what's going on in the industry, as well as learning things that you might apply video to, or you might learn some techniques or tips you want to apply in your own business or live streaming efforts. I don't know everything. We don't know everything, obviously. We try to bring on experts who do. And that's why today's show is going to be all about how to properly prepare for topical and engaging live shows. Brian Matiash, who is an author, a photographer, a podcaster, and quite an expert when it comes to prepping for shoots, live video or photography shoots, is a great person to talk to about this. That's why we brought him on, and I'm really excited to dive into that. We are having a couple issues with some of our graphics and some of the things that are going on in the show, so it's going to be a pretty bare bones show, but it should still be a lot of fun. And if you want to catch all the bells and whistles with all the graphics, we'll add those in our post-production run. Meanwhile, though, I do want to welcome you all for joining us at this time. We are live every Thursday at 2:30 Pacific time on Thursdays, and we can read your comments. And so I will see those. If you have questions, please chat them in, say hi, tell us where you're streaming in from, how you're using Wirecast. All that stuff's great. So I'd love to see those. I'm actually pulling them in on my New Blue social media tool. So Deborah Lee, you want to cut to my desktop, I can actually show folks how I'm seeing this, but I basically just point this tool at the correct URLs, and I can just hit this Get Comments button right there. So I can actually hit the Get Comments, and I can see any of your comments that pop up here, and I can even add them to a playlist here, which can hook on the back end to a graphical display. So we could run those on the screen if our graphics sort of programs and inputs were all hooked up at the moment, which they're not. So, but in the meantime, I'll use this for reading your questions and comments. So say hi and leave a chat. We'll also be putting some links in the chat as we go along. If you're curious, you can also subscribe and get notified when we're live and about upcoming show topics or upcoming guests like Brian on the show. You can find that at telestream.net/WirecastLive. That's all one word, telestream.net/WirecastLive. That's a great place to get notified and get on our email list, and we'll send you some tips, tricks, and special offers too sometimes if you're interested. Okay. In the meantime, we do have a new segment. We're calling it the News of the Week. Now, of the best things that happened, if you missed it, was the launch of the Falcon Heavy rocket by SpaceX. It was a successful launch. This is, I believe, the most powerful human sort of created rocket to ever lift off of the planet Earth. It was 3 of their Falcon 9 rockets strapped together, and it had as much thrust as a 27 Boeing 747s taking off at the same time. It's incredible. Now, of course, one thing SpaceX does very well is video. They do live video streams and video feeds of all their launches. It's a great marketing tool, but it's also a great way just to feel involved and see what's going on with this amazing company and their technology and what's going on. Very few things are as inspiring as watching a successful space launch. So I highly encourage you go check this out. There's actually a couple videos I want you to check out for this news item. So number one, if you missed it, go back, and I'm going to pull this up on my desktop. Watch the, I'm just going to pull this full screen. Watch the 30-minute video that SpaceX has put together of this launch. It takes you from the beginning to end, all the highlights. They kind of run this opening clip, and then they cut to their live action during the launch, and they do an amazing job of walking you through it. There's about 20 minutes of kind of talking about how the rocket works and what the challenges are and how it's all going to sort of take off. And then they even give you like countdowns. So I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit. They give you countdowns. They show you sort of where you're at in the launch sequence. And then you get to watch the whole thing from beginning to end and through all the different stages. It's really incredible. I don't want to give away or spoil the ending, but I will say pretty darn successful launch and amazing to watch. It really makes you feel like you're there. So we'll share that link in the chat if you're curious, and go watch that. The next thing you're going to want to watch is the other link we'll share, and this is the live feed on YouTube that SpaceX is currently live streaming right now. And you can see the chat's just going crazy. There's like 10,000 people watching. These are live feeds of Starman, the sort of astronaut that they've put in space, or the mannequin they put in SpaceX's spacesuit. And he's currently heading on his way to Mars in an awesome Tesla Roadster that's hanging out on the edge in space. And they are live streaming this video the whole time. So they kind of sort of automatically randomly change angles, but you'll see in crazy stuff like here, I'll just skip back to this part. You'll see crazy live shots of literally a car with a spaceman in it in space with Earth behind it. No images like this have ever sort of come back to us live and natural like that. I'm just so thankful to this whole mission just for something like this in the first place. Like this is so rad. Let me hit play here. So there you go. This is all because of this launch. So go watch the live feed. You can see some amazing footage and some amazing live stuff, and join the community, add comments and all that stuff as it's going. So I highly recommend checking out that live feed. Those are that's one of the interesting, cool things that happened this week. The next news item, and I'll just kind of quickly skip through this. There's a great article on Wired.com, if you missed it, about the long-form GIF. I like to say GIF. Some people might say GIF. I'm a GIF person. The long-form GIF, and it talks about how GIFs have been getting longer and longer and basically turning into mini movies these days, and that these days the creation tools are so sophisticated with like Giphy.com and lots of GIF created tools that there's no reason why you can't create a 5-minute GIF now. And many people in fact do, and there's famous ones like this sort of Goodnight Sweet Prince, which is like, you know, all these amazing, it's all done in GIF format, and you could check this out if you're curious. So get on the train, start making longer and longer GIFs, and put them in your web browsers or on your web page, because I think GIFs are awesome, even if they're a little, it's just great because they were created, what, like 20 years ago, and used a lot in the early web days, and then they just fell out of favor, and then it was about 2013, the article states that they came back into favor and have really just taken off from there, and just amazing stuff that people are doing with GIFs. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is, if you didn't know about it, YouTube has changed their monetization rules. This is kind of a big deal. This news came out a couple weeks ago on their blog on Google, has talked about their new approach to monetization. This is very important. It kind of came out of the sort of the controversy around the YouTube creators that, you know, had some very, very, you know, controversial content and weren't really using their responsibility to their audience very well, and monetizing, and then of course YouTube was monetizing against videos of questionable content because they just don't check those things. And what YouTube basically says, and they kind of own up to it, and I completely agree with this, is they say that prior to now, the requirements for monetization had simply been, do you have a total of 10,000 views on your channel? And now we're going to consider things like not only the size of your channel, but also your audience engagement, how active are you, and then the creator behavior will be will all be taken into consideration now into whether or not you can monetize your YouTube channel. So finally, they're getting a little bit smarter and more intentional in how they run ads on different content. So hopefully you'll see maybe a slightly more responsible YouTube and more responsible creators out there. One of the things I'm a big advocate of is media responsibility. Take responsibility for the content you're making, and don't just assume that that stuff goes into a vacuum and has no effect on the world. So really, I think rules like this help encourage that. I mean, and can maybe not encourage people to start making money against very sort of amoral or problematic content, which is sort of what we've seen and has kind of led us down some dark paths. All right, if you have any comments on YouTube creation, and monetization rules, or if you caught the SpaceX launch, please leave those in the comments and let us know what you thought about that. I'm going to pull up those comments actually real quick here and get comments. Here we go. All right, maybe I'm grabbing the wrong URL. Let's grab this. So one of the cool things I like about the new blue titler is that I can just grab those and grab the correct comments in there. All right, so folks, that's our news for the week. I'll be looking at your comments and we'll come back to those if you have any questions. But in the meantime, I'd like to get to our main feature for today. Our guest has been waiting very patiently while we've had a couple issues on the show today, and I want to bring him on and introduce him. If you don't know him or know his work, Brian Matiash is a famous world-renowned photographer. He's a professional photographer. His work has been featured all over the place, and he does incredible images and landscapes, and he's known for not only teaching others how to do photography, he's also a published author and a podcaster, and he's done some great live video shows as well, usually around the topics of photography or travel and so forth. So really excited to have him on. He is a Wirecast user, and I love watching what he's been doing with the program. And I couldn't be more pleased to have him on the show to talk about how he prepares for his shows. Because one of the things he does really, really well is he'll craft a topic and then craft a whole show around that topic and bring in relevant examples and talk about them and dissect them and dive into them. So currently he's doing a podcast called The No Photo Show, which is really well done. You can subscribe to it on iTunes if you're curious. We'll get more into that as we get into the interview. But without further ado, I'd like to say welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it. That's got to be one of the nicest intros I've ever received.
Well, you're one of the nicest guys I know.
Oh, thanks.
And I'm sorry for the audio issues. I really do apologize for that.
I threw the Skype issues at you, so it's all good. These things happen.
Yes. All right. Well, it does happen. So, Brian, real quick, I just want to say, first of all, thanks for being here. You're joining us from your home in Lincoln, Nebraska, where you recently moved.
That's right.
Okay, and you're getting good bandwidth out there, so that's good.
Yeah, hard connected to the router. That's kind of a must. When we moved here, I told my wife that I needed the cable modem and the router in my office because I do most of the live stuff. So
fair enough. I think that's a legit reason, for why you needed total control and access over the internet. I totally get it. I have to make some similar excuse to my wife.
Exactly.
So, Brian. Maybe I can try swapping over, because if that keeps happening, I'm not going to be able to conduct this interview. So, Brian, real quick, can you explain a little bit about how you got sort of started in photography and then how that naturally evolved into what you're doing now, which is now you're kind of doing it all: video production, live streaming, podcasting. You've actually, you're a published author. I mean, it's been quite a journey for you.
Yeah, it's been, growing up with I have my education, in my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, those are in like project management and information technology. So if you were to go to the 21-year-old Brian and say, this is what I'd be doing today, it would be really far out for me.
He wouldn't believe you.
No, totally not. He'd be like, what? But I did start photography in college. I never, growing up, I never really was into photography, but I started in college. Racked up some serious costs at the bursar's office when I, because back then that was before consumer grade digital cameras were really out, so you had to develop film.
Right.
But yeah, as things progressed, my early career was in the tech industry and in the financial software industry. I worked for Motorola. and some other financial companies and depositories. But when I started seeing that I could actually make a career kind of out of photography, that's when I started moving over towards that. And then eventually it was, I think I have a more of an odd kind of career as opposed to most commercial photographers or professional photographers, that they almost exclusively make their money through either licensing or working with companies or whatnot. I actually worked with companies like On One, Google, Wacom, Sony. So I worked as a full-time employee in the photo space, in the creative space. And then I also have my own business, like you had mentioned, where I saw, with specifically speaking about live, when Facebook was really starting to push live, that's when I was like, you know what, I need to give this a shot. And that's when I also, entered into Wirecast. I've been a screen, just like with, with ScreenFlow, a user for I don't know how many years. So I knew of Wirecast, but when I saw Facebook and of course Twitter getting Periscope and YouTube Live, that's when I introduced that as part of the marketing side of my business. Also the podcast you mentioned is kind of the newest part of it. So that's kind of how everything, it's all very kind of, I don't want to say serendipitous, but it just kind of, I saw an opportunity and I went and I tried it out. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so you just sort of kind of fell in love with the act of photography and just sort of the craft of it. Is that, and what was sort of one of the first moments that clicked for you? No pun intended.
For me, it was, I remember one of the first moments it clicked was when I was still understanding the very, very fundamentals of composition. And in my head, I was thinking of the intent, meaning I remember I had a chessboard, this really cheesy chessboard. This was in college, like plastic with rubber chess pieces. And I wanted to take a photo where one piece in the front was in focus and then, gradually goes out of focus. Mm-hmm. So I was approaching it as a novice, like someone, this is what I want to do. And when I started to teach myself and understand the concept of aperture and these kinds of techniques, that's when it really clicked for me in terms of, okay, this is very cool technically, but I'm from New York City, and I grew up in just a very, very detail-rich, subject-rich environment. Of course, with all the architecture and stuff and the people. So that's what my early career focused on, was that kind of architecture. Also, what's called urbex or urban exploration, where you go to these abandoned places. There's beauty to that as well. And it wasn't until 2010 or 2011 when I moved from Boston. I was living in Boston at the time. I moved to Portland, Oregon. I was working for On One, which make photography editing software. And that's when I saw my very first waterfall. Growing up, my parents, we never went camping. I up until like my mid to late 20s, I would never slept in a tent. Our vacation of choice was a cruise. So when I saw waterfalls and nature and like fog and all this kind of like lush moss and verdancy, that's where I fell in love with landscape photography, and that's where I've been this entire time, is kind of like heavy on landscape and travel.
See, that's really interesting. So I've got on my desktop here just one of your blogs that you sort of put up there, and I come to your work in the last few years, so I've only really seen your landscape work. So Deborah, you can get me out of here. I don't need to be in front of his beautiful images. Just this gorgeous, I just love how you're just totally like amping up the greens on these shots, and just you're working with, just like you said, the lush verdancy of it, but you've got this great way of pulling in water and fog and mist through some time-lapse stuff that you're doing, and maybe slower shutter speeds. It's so cool.
Oh, well, it's kind of funny that you brought it up. I wasn't going to bring it up otherwise. Well, I'm actually red-green colorblind. Aha. So this is one, because of the kind of red side of things, this is why you'll hardly ever see me do any sort of portrait work, wedding photography, any of that stuff, because I am always really bad at telling skin tone. And my wife, she'll I mean, always. If I try to edit a photo of someone, I just edited a photo of my nephew. We were at my sister-in-law's place, and I showed it to her, and she's like, the skin's kind of green. And then greens, because of the green side of things, sometimes I tend to oversaturate or adjust the hue. So most people would say it's an incorrect hue of green, but it took a little bit for me to turn that doubt from, or the kind of being just
uncertain
doubtful
about it.
Uncertain, and turn that into a strength and understand that is my brand, that is who I am. Like,
go with it.
I remember a photographer once, actually it might have actually been that photo of Panther Creek, the top photo.
Oh yeah.
A photographer who I greatly admire, and she sat down with me. I'm 99% positive that's it, and she's like, let me help you correct it. And I was like, absolutely not. But she was, she wasn't being patronizing, right. But that is my brand. That is who I am. And so I'm glad you brought up the greens. It gave me kind of a pass to shot in there why the greens tend to be a bit vibrant. Because they're immediately there what stick out to me. And you don't know this about me, but I'm actually slightly red green colorblind. So there we go.
Yeah. So for me, and I remember this. So it's probably third grade in California. We had to all do these vision tests, and you do the spot books where like there's like numbers in the spots, and like I just got to page 4, and I'm just like, I don't know, I can't see a number. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? It's right there. It's an 8 or it's a 4. And I'm like, what are you guys? It's just a bunch of spots. Like there's nothing there, and then like they're like, hey Andrew, you're just really slightly colorblind when it comes to just the slight shades of green and slight shades of red, and you just can't see the difference. And so I was like, I guess that sucks. Can't quite see red and green. I obviously see green. You obviously see red. We see that, but when it gets to the subtleties, maybe we miss those a little bit. And I remember, fast forward like 20 years. And I'm working as a teaching assistant in a classroom where we're doing Christmas projects. And it's like a first grade kindergarten classroom. We're all, helping the kids work on these projects. And like what they are is a green Christmas tree made out of construction paper. You cut it out, you put it on a red backing.
Of course,
because you gotta have green and red. So it's just Christmas, and they're putting these up in these perfect squares. Like each kid's making like the same cutout, same thing, and it's like becoming this almost like mosaic or quilt of these red, green, red, green, red, green, red, green, the most aggressive green and the most aggressive red. And I'm looking at the wall, and I can't stop staring at it because it's like pulsating. It's like a disco. Something was going insane with my vision and my cones and rods or whatever in my eyes, and I'm just like, this is so wild. Like, is anybody else seeing this? Like, you can't see this? It's crazy. But didn't bother anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, for my one thing I'll never forget colorblind wise was when I was 17 in Brooklyn. I was on my road test to get my full driver's license, and I never forget this. The instructor was like, make a broken K-turn or a 3-point turn by drive past that red car there and make the turn. And it didn't even occur to me, in terms of to say anything. So I drove right past the car. And he just looked at me, this most indignant look, like, what are you playing at? And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I forgot to tell you that. Unfortunately, colorblindness doesn't preclude you from driving.
Right. That's a good thing. From being a pilot, I've heard. Apparently,
Air Force
pilots.
Yeah.
Although I always wondered, like, would I pass that? Would I not? I wonder, like, how bad my colorblindness is. I mean, obviously didn't pass the spot book, so, I mean, it probably doesn't bode
Would you want to pass it, though, on a lark, though?
Good point. 2-year contract. Ha! I proved it. They're like,
yeah, exactly. Welcome to the Air Force.
So Brian, let's get into the main topic for a little bit for today, and just talk a little bit about how you, how do you prepare topical and germane shows? And I should bring up that you've created a tool for today, an easy PDF. People can get these tools that you're recommending, and so we'll put up that link and we'll put that in the chat soon, where you guys can get these tools that Brian's talking about. But first, before we get into the actual specific tools, maybe talk a little bit about your approach to show creation and to how you make shows. And if you guys are curious, just Google No Photo Show. That's a great place to start. No Name Photo Show, sorry.
Yep, no worries.
And then you can also look up at brianmatiash.com is another great place where you post all your episodes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
When I first launched the live stream, for example, actually even before that, I've been blogging for I don't know how many years, and the blog has always been kind of a medley of photo. Here's a great photo, and also topical things like a photo tip or this, or this or that, some sort of inspirational piece. And in order for me to, I treat it like you would treat a television show or any, some sort of a magazine, like an editor, meaning you have to lay out in advance, not just the next day, but ideally for weeks to come, stories, while also budgeting in time to bring in any sort of late breaking thing like SpaceX news topic that you put it played that happened this week, plus the YouTube monetization thing happened a week or two ago. So you're always kind of you have to have a kind of like a hopper of content, of topics. So I am very kind of neurotic. I have this weird thing about the tools that I use. Like I'm partly non-committal. Like any tool that I use, I really want it to be cross-platform, meaning that I want the tool to, first of all, to support cloud sync. I want to be able to use it on my mobile phone. I want to be able to use it on Mac or Windows or iOS or Android. And so it's been just a few years of rendering down. I try a new tool and it didn't work, so that was kind of put out there. Some tools like Evernote, for example, is something that I've been using for I don't know how many years, and it's indispensable for my kind of like content management workflow. And again, actually, speaking of that whole content management workflow and strategy, that also was a very real component of my professional experience when I was working, say, at On One or working at Wacom. I need to be able to capture content, and in that case, it was multi-dimensional, meaning I needed content for Wacom. I still needed content for myself. Like I have my own corporation, like my company, and I still needed to feed that beast. So, finding the tools that work, and that are seamless, and again that work on desktop and on mobile, was really important. So, I thought about it, and I've watched Wirecast Live, and I was like, that. You remember I pitched it to you. I'm like, I think it'd be cool to talk about this, because if you're doing a live show, odds are it's somewhat topical, right? Like, you're not doing the same thing like a webinar over and over again. It needs to be up to date. So now going to the photo show, which was what I called my my live stream, and that was to Facebook. I needed to make sure that every week I had content that was engaging, that can kind of bring people in, while also kind of thinking of ways to kind of have call to actions where the audience, where they can opine about it. They can kind of, like you were talking about with the New Blue Social, meaning like I can capture comments, bring it in and engage with them. Because that's the key difference, in my opinion, of a live show versus just me recording offline and putting it up on YouTube.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And actually, what I want to do is, here we go. If you guys are curious about what the photo show is, you can go to Brian's website at brianmatiash.com or just Matiash.com, right? Yeah,
it's just Matiash.com. Brian Matiash will forward you. I still have that domain too.
Still have that. So
sure.
This is when you were sort of first getting started, and I'm not even sure you'd moved yet. You were probably still in Portland for this show.
Yes.
Okay. And, you're bringing in relevant topics, and so you guys can check out these archives. This is where I sort of first got started. But I remember you would actually really meticulously plan how you brought in and out images into the show.
Yes.
Right? You kind of scripted ahead of time, so you knew exactly how it would come on screen and how it would disappear, and all of that would be kind of prepared. And so you're saying that sort of over the years, you've kind of come to the suite of tools that you like to do to kind of plan out, first of all, have a kind of plan out your topics and kind of get your mind share what topics you want to address, what type of news items, and then you actually kind of boil down from there into the actual production. Can you, maybe let's just dive in and talk a little bit about those tools and how you start. So maybe let's start by just giving a quick preview of the actual PDF here, and so we can talk about, kind of be on the same page literally.
There it is.
There we go.
And I built that in Canva.
Yeah. So that looks beautiful, right? So you guys, if you guys want to download this, these are Brian's like top tools, and we'll talk about each one of these here. You mentioned Evernote, you mentioned Feedly. We'll talk about some of that. So Deborah, if we can put the link up, it's basically, we have a short link where you guys can get this at Brian's website. It's telestream.net/BrianM. Telestream.net/BrianM. And that is where you guys can go download this. Okay, so Brian, take it away. Why don't we talk about the first sort of two tools? We'll start with Evernote and then move on to Feedly. I assume this is kind of a left to right thing.
Yeah. The way that actually we can go from right to left in the top. Pretend like we're in Hebrew or Arabic.
Okay.
So with Feedly, the way that I approach it is I want to be able to I need to find the content first, right? And so Facebook and Twitter are okay. The problem with them is, especially now that they are, Facebook just kind of how they're totally rejiggering their newsfeed algorithm, plus the fact that it's not necessarily chronological. It's all algorithmic based. That the social media is not necessarily the best place for that unless you want to spend time on the trending sections. But in 2010, Google killed probably one of my favorite services, and that was Reader. So I was a big fan of RSS, which basically it allows you to hook into anyone's blog, and anytime you post or the blog makes a new post, it brings it in there. So instead of going to 20 or 30 different blogs, you just go to this one reader and you have access to all of that content. So in the wake of that, Feedly kind of stepped up and really, really owned the space, and they still do. Like I pay for Feedly Pro. I love this app because anytime I find some content, like I have my list of, and I can actually let me share my screen here.
Yeah, it'd be great.
So this is Feedly right here, and on the left here, I've got like the websites, a bunch of different websites that I follow their blogs. And if you're running a blog, odds are you have some sort of what's called an RSS feed. That's all you need to get it in here. But also, they have this discovery section, which makes it really, really nice to find kind of serendipitously new content. Because remember, if you're following these Apple blogs, you're only seeing the posts from these blogs. But there could be so many kind of you can carry them off of those blogs, or find just unrelated but still topical stuff. And then also you can just find new websites altogether. So this is the first thing that I do, and typically what I do here is if I find a story that I like, I'll send it over to Evernote. So again, the first phase of this is discovery. Finding
discovery. Okay.
Yeah, finding where is the content. And again, this is chronological. There's no algorithm. If the websites you're following posted it, it's there.
Right.
And you can save them into these boards. So I've got various boards that help me organize if I want. Okay. But usually they go into Evernote, this is one of my longest standing applications. I've used Evernote, I don't know for how many years. And it's just a great, anytime I find an article in RSS or anywhere on the internet, whether it's on my desktop or even on my phone or my iPad, I can send it into this. I have this unpublished post ideas. And so this is kind of like a topic hopper for me personally.
Let's see, we're getting some crop here. I don't know if everyone's getting that. I'm not sure why. Maybe.
Let me see. It's showing fine in Wirecast here. So let me do this. Let me see if I can. Might
not be coming through Zoom. Okay, there we go. That's now we can see stuff.
Okay, cool. So I'll just, instead of going full screen.
Okay, so hold on. So you're on the Feedly site, and then
I was on the Feedly site,
and then how did you move from? So you just from a different tab, you jump over to Evernote, and is there something you're copying and pasting from Feedly?
No, I can go from Feedly. I can just it has share intent functions. You know how like on iOS when you hit the little up arrow.
Yep.
So this same thing, you can send it to Feedly, or to Evernote. You can send it to Twitter. You can do it pretty much anything you want to do.
Okay.
And the reason why I like Evernote more than say Pocket, for example,
I use Pocket.
So Pocket, and so let me the reason why is because at least with Evernote, right off the bat, it'll pull or it'll ingest the entire article, not just a snippet. Which I think Pocket Free does.
Yeah, and Pocket Free does weird formatting stuff too.
Exactly.
It's super weird. I'm noticing that this article looks perfectly formatted with all the rich text and the placements and all that stuff.
Well, what's funny, Andrew, is that so you can you have an option to bring in the article with the full HTML, or this is what's called simplified format. So it removes a lot of the formatting, but it still, like you said, retains the images. And these are kind of like right here. I can take the image if I want, and put it to get it ready to like you had mentioned, to bring it into the show, to illustrate a point. So that's this is my topic hopper for either blog posts or the Photoshop Live posts. And the way that I segment them is I'll use tags. So like if I want to mark this as an article or a piece of content for the Photoshop, I'll put TPS versus say I can go here and just put a tag for blog. So that you know, you can go as deep, you know, down the rabbit hole as you want in terms of organization, and formatting. But Evernote to me is like the greatest thing in the world. This is another one that is free, but I pay for the premium version.
Yeah.
And I have everything like new products, any sort of new products that I want to create for my store. Mm-hmm. I'll have that there. Like these are all of my my notebooks. Also for social, this is not relevant totally for live streaming or anything, but for social templates here. So oftentimes on Instagram, I want to put a series of hashtags. Mm-hmm. So I've got that note there. Or I always put my gear that the photo is that I used to take the photo that I'm sharing. Mm-hmm. So that's all there. I just switch between the apps and I copy and paste it. So it's just like
that's really cool.
Oh yeah, it depends on. It's really versatile. You can either use it very basically, or you can really go down the rabbit hole with these tools.
Yeah, that's so cool. Scalable. Okay, so that makes so much sense because I'm actually in the midst of kind of exactly what you're describing now because we're trying to add more relevant news and stuff in our industry and our space here, and so I'm just kind of crawling websites and news outlets and things like that, but I've not yet perfected a workflow tool like this to hand these images off to say Deborah Lee, who can then load them up and put them on the screen, so she knows where the links are and what images we're referring to, and
I'll
just do that. That's so cool.
Yeah, anytime you want to geek out, and so we can transition. Actually, so far all of this stuff is a one-person show. It's just me and myself. Mm-hmm. But if we go to Trello, so Trello is what I use. It's there you definitely have some overlaps in some of the tools in terms of things you can do. Like yes, with Trello, I can go from Feedly or from the web and send articles here to Trello. But it's the kind of implementation of how the data is presented that I like it. And it's done in cards. So I use Trello exclusively for the podcast with my co-host, Sharky James. Mm-hmm. And so you can see here, every episode will have the topics we're going to talk about, and you can go in to each individual card and have more data. We can share imagery. So we know exactly, and this is our topic hopper. So similarly to Evernote, rather than me sharing an Evernote notebook, which you can do, mm-hmm. rather than me sharing that with Sharky, we just put everything into Trello, so it's kind of self-contained. Mm-hmm. So Trello is, for you guys, Trello could be a really interesting opportunity because you can have multiple boards. You don't need, you can have a board specifically for Wirecast Live. You can have a board for Facebook posts. You can have, and then however you schedule that stuff out. I use Buffer for that, but I didn't include that into this list because it's not really part of, content.
Right. Yeah, Buffer obviously is where you can basically federate this stuff out to all of your sort of social media management tools.
Exactly.
Cool.
Okay. And then, one of the other. So I also mentioned in the PDF here, ScreenFlow. So that to me is a big one. A lot of times I will, if I'm referencing a YouTube video, like there was one episode of the Photo Show where I wanted to reference a snippet from a Peter McKinnon video. And so I was just like, wait a second, I'll just use ScreenFlow to record the snippet. It records the audio, and then I can use the markup and annotation tools to create an actual MP4 file that I embed into Wirecast as one of the objects, one of the media files. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that's another part of it. Monosnap, is more for just static screenshots. So if you don't need a video, you just want a screenshot. Both Windows and Mac have built-in screenshot utilities, but I like Monosnap for two reasons. One, it allows me to blur. So if I need to redact or kind of hide something, I can do that.
Okay.
And then also it with the premium version, I can send them those screenshots right to Evernote. So they're kind of synced to the cloud. So if like, oh man, I need to dig up that one screenshot, I can do that.
And are you finding it really easy to publish, you know, copying the links that are, you know, into the board, and then that's pulling in some of the HTML and doing a little embed on the card. And similarly, when you're taking a ScreenFlow video or you're doing a, you know, what's the name, the Snap tool?
Oh, Monosnap.
Monosnap. Or if you're doing Monosnap, can you publish directly to Trello with those as well as to, you know, to Evernote?
Yeah, because a lot of these apps use the OS level sharing intent system. So like that up arrow or that little up icon, like this right here. I don't know if you can see it if you switch to my screen.
Yeah, let's go back, Deborah Lee, to his screen. There
so, let me bring this down a little bit. So most apps have this little icon here, and that accesses the sharing intent.
And you can edit that list, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. The difference, and this kind of illustrates the difference between Evernote and Pocket for me. I can send from Feedly to Trello, but it'll only bring in kind of like a link scrape. It won't bring the full, or won't capture the full contents of the article. And to be fair, Trello, you're not necessarily using Trello to have the full content of the article. It's more just kind of, I use it as organizational.
Yeah,
exactly. That's where Evernote is great, because check this out. So let's say I want to go to, you know, Telestream, and I want to use this. All I need to do is click. There's this little Chrome and Safari extension called a web clipper. And so I can click that, and then I can select here. I mentioned the simplified article formatting, and it shows you a preview, like a real-time preview. If I want to get the whole article, I can get the whole page, you know, and then I hit save. Oh, and I can also say, by default, you see it goes to that notebook I was telling you about. I'll hit save. It'll start clipping everything, and then in a second or two, when I go to the unpublished post ideas, we'll give it a second, you know, to sync up to the cloud, but it'll come here and good to go.
Fantastic. So that's in the premium tool, the premium version.
No. That's free.
That's free. So you can choose the level of clipping you want to do from any web page or site or article into Evernote. So cool.
What's a tragedy though is Evernote purchased a few years ago an app called Sketch, which I use as well. Sketch is a fantastic screen grabbing tool, and its killer feature is this timed crosshair. So I can say in 5 seconds, here I'll do this, and I'll make my selection right there, and you see it counts down. So if I need to access a menu or a drop down or something that I can't do normally, because screenshots can be very finicky, this allows me to get that. I use that feature. The reason why I still have Sketch installed is because of that feature. I use that a lot when I'm creating an ebook or a post where I need to reference a menu item.
Nice.
So that's really good. The tragedy is,
let's get to the tragedy part.
It's so they discontinued it, but it's only available currently for Mac.
Okay.
I was really, when I put this infographic together, it was really important for me to be totally kind of, you know, androgynous and let, whether you're Windows or Mac.
Now, ScreenFlow, to be fair, is not both platforms. It's something we've been wanting to do for a long time, but ScreenFlow is, we obviously are a little biased here.
Well,
you should get a Mac if you need to use ScreenFlow.
And it's worth it. I mean, there are certainly other you know, screen recording tools out there, but I grew up on ScreenFlow, so I'm very loyal. Yeah.
So tell me, okay, so let's just check a few of the comments here, and
sure.
I apologize if I missed a few of these, but Vicky was saying, Brian, you helped her so much at the beginning of her live streaming days, and you have the biggest heart.
Oh, Vicky. That's right.
It takes one to know one, Vicky, right?
That is awesome. We got together at a coffee shop in Portland right before she moved. That's great, Vicky. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then we have Daniel, who has issue with some hotkeys, so we can definitely help you out with those if you contact support, or there's some places you can get that. We have Gabriel, who's trolling us. And do you have
never feed the trolls?
Mike, are you by chance using a screen capture in Wirecast for this show? If yes, by chance did the audio drop out on Andrew's solo shot a few minutes ago? There's a very good chance, Mike. We had to reconstruct from scratch. So yeah, Deborah Lee's confirming that yes, she did not add audio to that shot. So no worries. That's what happened.
I totally forgot for a second that I was controlling. I was like, wow, my desktop's on for a long time.
yeah. That's the one danger. We give you the wheel, and yeah, you get to make your own mistakes.
I've got my my multicam. This is essentially my live cam setup.
I like that artwork there. Where's that from?
That is, oh man, that is Timmy Ham is an artist. IamSloth.com. Sloth like the. I commissioned him to build that. That's kind of his representation of my two. Like my kind of life is the landscapes of Portland, and also the bottom is more the architecture of New York in a very abstract way.
So cool, man.
And there's some waterfalls and stuff, and then the Philips hue lights are around it.
Oh, it's a nice touch. It's nice.
Yeah.
And I'm loving, naturally, I love the lighting. I love the presentation. You've got great sort of the lenses that you've chosen on these cameras.
Thank you.
Looking good, man.
I appreciate that.
Slick.
I mean, it's all very intentional. Like, I mean, even like a little
I was
kind of like moving.
You got it. The props are like so important. You got to pick props that really matter. So,
all right, my hot toys over there.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So, we probably I could probably geek out on that stuff with you for a while.
Sure.
So, but Sharky says Baba Booey.
Oh, Sharky's my co-host, and we're both very, very big Howard Stern fans.
so tell me a little bit about so why is it called the No Name Photo Show?
Because Sharky is currently the host of the Petapixel photography podcast, and Petapixel is one of the top content hubs for photography. So he leads their entire podcast, and we were chatting. I really loved his show. His show actually, and I actually brought it up in one of my episodes of the photo show. I loved how I've always wanted to find a photo podcast that was very topical, that was more newsy than kind of, just like as Sharky says, two guys in the basement, just kind of like, putzing around. So I really liked it. And that also helped shape the formatting of the photo show. I wanted it to be more kind of topical, more newsy, which was why these tools are so important, is to make sure that I'm always seeing the most relevant stuff, and I can present it on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I listened to it. You guys were catching some obscure stuff, like rules for photography in like national parks, and stuff. Like I was just like, man, you guys are on it.
We are. I mean, we oftentimes we use Trello. We also will communicate through Facebook Messenger. And it's funny you say that, because that topic we talked about later that week, there was a correction, or there was kind of clarification about the rules in Zion. But so that is, I totally lost the question that you asked.
Yeah. So the question was No Name Photo Show. So how you came up with the title?
So the No Name, when we decided, I reached out to Sharky and we became friends, and I floated the idea of doing a podcast with him. And so he has a very deep understanding of podcasting. He's been doing it for years. I spoke with Nicole, my wife, and we were trying to figure it out. And finally, I think actually it might have been Nicole. It might have been Nicole who came up with the idea of like just No Name Photo Show. And that was it. We couldn't think of a name. So it's like, let's call it the No Name Photo Show.
I like it.
Yeah,
it works. And it's a good one. And if you guys are curious about that, you can subscribe to it on iTunes or find it at matiash.com. Okay, so let's kind of we're about at time here, so I want to make sure that we kind of wrap up and respect your time for this. Can you, last question really, and this one is more specific back to the workflow. You'd mentioned you were trying to be very platform agnostic, and allow people to come to these tools and pick tools that could be very versatile, but both on mobile or iOS or on Android, on your desktop computer, in a browser, in Chrome. How do these tools, just as you mentioned them, stack up on mobile? I mean, I know ScreenFlow is not a mobile app. We can do capture mobile. It can do screen captures on mobile devices or iOS devices. But for the rest of them, if you find a great article on your iPhone, or if you're using, I guess, the Feedly app on your iPhone, all that, anything you're saving or sharing out to Evernote, it's just as easy to do on the mobile devices, and all the clipping and everything you were showing.
Yeah. For example, with Feedly's iOS app or Android app, there's in the preferences, you can even set what's called a favorite sharing tool. And so Evernote is one of those options. Or favorite saving. There's two. There's favorite saving tool and favorite sharing tool. I select Evernote so that when I go into any individual article, right on the top, the little Evernote elephant icon is there. I just tap it and it just goes into Evernote. So, or if I'm in Safari or Chrome on mobile, just like you would if you see an article and you want to send it to someone via messages, you hit that same up arrow, the sharing intent icon. You select Evernote, and you do that. In terms of video, that's gotten a lot easier for me, significantly easier. I used to actually, if I needed to do video off of mobile, I would actually connect it to ScreenFlow through a Lightning cable. But now, because with iOS 11, they added the ability to screen record locally. I just swipe down and I record the video, and then I bring it into Wirecast, or if I'm using it in an offline video, into Final Cut. So it really, I mean, when I put these apps together, with the exception of ScreenFlow, I was very meticulous. And this, I have this also another weird compulsion where whenever Google releases a new Pixel phone, I end up buying it for like 2 weeks and then I return it. Also, when I worked at Google, I switched between phones literally multiple times a day. And so it was very important. Anything that's critical, mission critical, has to support cloud sync, meaning nothing can be local.
Right.
And also it needs to be cross-platform. The great benefit to that is like, I can wipe this computer, I can get a new computer, and in a half hour be fully up and running. I mean, remember back in the day when you installed a new version of Windows or something, and you're just like, you have to have your files on a hard drive and make sure that everything syncs up, and program files are messed up and drivers are messed up. Here it's just like, boom.
So for your entire computer's operating system, you're backing everything up to a cloud-based platform? Your entire image and hard drive and everything? Yeah,
actually. So it's funny that you say that. The operating system and that stuff, that's all backed up through Time Machine locally here. But I'm not as worried about that.
Yeah.
But in terms of, so I have about 7 terabytes of photos, and for the past 2 months, I've been migrating slowly over to backing those up to Creative Cloud, which is Adobe's product. But I also have here, actually, I don't know if you can see it on the side camera, but right over there,
you have a RAID mass.
It's just there's 2 massive 24 terabyte drives.
Yep.
That's my production and my on-site backup, and then I have an off-site backup that, like, even when I lived in Portland, every 2 weeks I had a 12 terabyte hard drive that my neighbor kept in his fireproof safe. Now, once I get the photos, and that only has photos.
Yeah.
I mean, I use Dropbox, so all of my documents are already backed up. And then Evernote's in the cloud.
Good there. Most of the ideas are safe. It's just the actual tangibles, and that's really cool. Yeah, I was talking with Trey Ratcliffe. He was on the show a few weeks back.
Good friend.
And he was. I was like, hey, what's your data management storage? You have a system yet that He's like, not yet. Still looking for it. It's always in process.
Yep, I remember I visited him in Austin a few years ago before he moved to New Zealand, and it was just like, I'm sure it's still the same. I mean, just kind of, has everything everywhere. For me, I'm way too neurotic about it. And I just really quickly, I have a story for that, and I'll never forget this. What led me to this obsession of making everything backed up was, shortly after 9/11, I went to New York City, and they had for, I think, a month or so, I can't remember, they had Con Edison, the local utility, put up the tribute in lights, those 2 massive
right, like the Ghost of the Towers.
Exactly. Yep. And they still do that, but this was the first year, and I totally just like, I'll go. Finally, the last day, I went, and I could only get the shots from within the car, shooting out the sunroof. Got home, and I imported the photos onto my computer. This is years ago, but I don't remember what happened, but this was well before cloud backup.
Right.
But I lost the photos, and I will never, ever forget that. That was like, being melodramatic, but that was like losing a kid for me.
Yeah.
I don't have kids. I have 2 dogs, but I will never forget that sense of loss and that grief, because I didn't know at the time that they would keep doing it. And it was the last night. So for me, ever since then, I've always had multiple drives. I've got backup drives that are in the closet in case one fails. I can grab it. You know, I don't mess around.
No, you shouldn't. It's really important. I think always paranoid, always safe kind of thing. And that's good. That's your Scarlett O'Hara moment. Never again.
Never again.
Okay. Well, Brian, where can people get more information about you and see what you're doing?
Sure. I mean, Matiash.com that's my website. So that's where I post everything. And from there, that, like you said, kind of federates out through Buffer to social. But in terms of social, you know, this year, or the YouTube video, the YouTube URL is just YouTube/Brian Matiash.
Okay.
But YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, where I spend most of my time. And then you've got the No Name Photo Show, which is every Tuesday, Sharky and I put out a new episode. And you know, I'm a photographer, but for me, my content is very much heavy in photo and tech. So that's kind of, if you want to follow me, that's what if you're interested in photography, that is my life, is helping people become better photographers.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you're posting cool photos on Instagram pretty regularly.
Every day.
That's awesome. So
yeah, thank you, Buffer.
Yeah, thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. This was really helpful. Again, if you want to get these tools and get Brian's notes on them, he's done a great little handout for you guys. One sheet, super easy to follow, and you can see exactly what he's using them for, why they're helpful, why he likes them. You can find that at telestream.net/Brian M. That's Brian M as in Matiash. And and yeah, download that. I highly encourage you guys do that. Follow him on those channels. And Brian, thanks so much. This was so helpful. I learned a lot. I love it when I bring guests like yourself on the show and I'm like as interested as the audience. I have to ask as many questions just to sort of get these things like in my head so we can start improving and keep doing better on what we're working on. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Andrew. Thanks for having me on. Happy to geek out with you anytime.
All right, let's do it again.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, have a good one, and we will see you soon.
Sounds good.
All right. So that was Brian Matiash, photographer, author, podcaster, co-host of the No Name Photo Show, and just an all-around great guy. And you can see he's put a lot of thought and care into everything he does. It's just so fantastic to see someone who takes so much pride in his work, and you can see how that just filters through everything from preparing for a show to how he backs up his files to how he creates his photos and the types of sort of things that he goes for. So it's really awesome to have guests like that. If you have other guests like Brian or folks you'd like to see on the show, please let us know. We would love to reach out to them and have them on the show and have conversations like this. Hopefully this was helpful. You learned something. I know I did. And I'd like to thank our partners who make this show possible. Their technology makes this doable. They've either donated or given us equipment that we can use here in the studio. So it's been a really sort of collaborative team effort. And again, thanks to Deborah Lee and Trevor in the back room there for just kind of pulling things together at the last minute when the things don't go quite as planned. You know, it's live when you're right on the edge like this. So it's going to happen. All right. So thanks so much to you guys, our viewers. We will be back. I think we may or may not have a show next week. I actually have to fly out on Thursday evening, but I may be able to slip in a quick show next week. We may have a couple updates for you, so I'll see what I can do. Otherwise, we will definitely be back with another guest in 2 weeks. Actually, we won't be back then either because that's end of February. We're going to be a social media marketing world. So if I can slip in a show then too. So we may be on a little bit of a hiatus. I promise you it won't be long. We'll definitely get live. The best way to get notified when we're going to be live is to either sign up for the live notifications on Facebook or YouTube or on our email list. We'll just send you an email and let you know when we're going live. I try to coordinate with our team here to let them know that we're going to go live a little bit later. I'll do this thing. So just send out an email. So should work. That's a good way to get notified. Thanks to everyone. Lutz, great to see you. Vicky, thank you so much for joining, and your comments are so heartfelt and nice. Mike, thanks for joining. Gabriel, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Daniel, great discussions and questions, and if you have more for us, hit us up. Let us know, and again, if there's other guests you want to see on the show, we want to reach out to them and book them, but we should have some more fun ones coming up. I'm going to keep rambling on here if I don't turn off the show here. So I will see you guys soon. Thanks for watching. This has been another episode of Wirecast Live.